Peace and respect to you all. Welcome to Demolished Doctrine, the beginning of the end of religions. And yes, I do mean all of them. All of them. They're going down, baby. When the truth is revealed, the superstitions will stop. And that's why religions are always talking about dumping your superstitions. Today, we don't have Mac the Human. He and his family are having a very nice woodland picnic, extended vacation kind of thing. So kudos to them, and I hope they spoil each other rotten, as we all always should every time we get the chance. But we do have BigZebra.com. And Steve, what you got going on, buddy?
Well, not a lot is going on. Sadly, my best friend on the planet has passed away, and it was very, very sad. But he was suffering terribly from an amazing number of ailments. So he took his own life and took a number of pills, we suspect. Although we don't have word from an autopsy or anything.
Right.
Hello there, Moon Medi.
Hello, Moon Medi. Peace and respect to you. I'm sorry for your loss, Steve. I truly, truly am. No, I don't know who this person is that you're reflecting upon, but I have to say that it is much better that if and when we lose someone, and we're going to lose people, of course, that we do reflect on it. We do think about that situation. We do think about loss. It does grow us in empathy and understanding for others. And I think one of the smartest things we can do is look at the frailty of life and try to appreciate each other more. This is one of the reasons that I say that we should spoil each other rotten every chance we get, because you don't know when those chances are going to stop.
Yes. Something I always found surprising was that I've noticed one person in particular treated her husband like crap, I thought. But the moment he died, the campaign for sainthood began. And I thought, why not treat him well when he was alive? You know, what you're doing now doesn't make up for it.
No, of course it doesn't. And it was some really bad decision making. And I suppose that person couldn't see the value of that other person in their lives until that other person was gone. And then the value became obvious. And that's sad. And we have every opportunity to realize the situation we're in at any time and completely, adopt a bigger reading frame, a bigger picture frame, and act appropriate to that. And we always have opportunity to that. And I really recommend it to absolutely everybody. I really do.
I hope people follow that advice. The world would be a better place.
Might even be livable. Yeah, I don't want to go on and on about it. Brother, I'm sorry for your loss. More than that, I would pray for the learning experience of those who survived that, those who are around it and saw that, and those who loved that person, that they take that as a cue to do the best they can to be the friend a friend would want to have, to be a lover would want to have, and make yourself that person.
Yeah, pardon me if I don't say much. I'm still sort of profoundly freaking out. I thought I was remarkably sober and just a little teary, but eventually a friend said, hey, we should have a shot at writing a eulogy or sort of a goodbye message. And when I actually started writing it down, it turned out very well, what I had written. But holy crap, it just had me crying like a baby.
Good.
And the psychological effect of putting it on paper, well, not paper, a computer screen, typing
just
it out.
The same. Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, we had, what is it now? A sort of rough plan for tonight's talk, but I wanted to sort of turn it over to you because you may have uh, ideas getting us started.
Yeah, like I cut it out of your email, I pasted it onto Google Docs, and then I brought it up as a share screen. That's my idea of how to get started. So here it is. Here's. Go ahead.
Well, to start, I don't know where some of this came from. For example, we can't get to heaven by works because God doesn't pick favorites. And I'm not sure where that came from. I do know that there's the Protestant idea that it's by grace alone, not by good works. But for Catholics, it's a little different. And having said that, but I don't know where this idea about God not picking favorites. I mean, wouldn't Jesus be number one? Maybe
favorite?
The prophets. Yeah, he probably liked Mary.
I guess it all depends on how you look at it. So the way I look at that is, whenever an angel or messenger, or in some case, the Father, in some case represented, spoken as God Himself, is interacting with a prophet, a would-be listener, and should that prophet or disciple fall down onto the ground and faint for the shock value of what's going on, without exception.
I am sorry. Just had a bit of a hiccup there. So, what? Can you sort of repeat the gist of that?
Sure.
I apologize.
It's okay. When a messenger of God speaks to a prophet or disciple or what have you, and if that prophet or disciple faints for the shock of the situation, without fail, except for one book of the Bible, and I would single that out, and speak about the evils of that book, the messenger will lay their right hand on the shoulder of that person and comfort them and say things like, "Do not worship me. Do not be afraid. I'm your brother in tribulation. We're on equal footing. I'm no better than you," and things like that. You see.
Okay.
So the messenger has a very different job than say the prophet does. They're kind of opposite jobs, but in the eyes of their overall picture, they're equivalent to each other. There is no higher and lower job. So Jesus speaks of this in reference to the apostles and all of the disciples and everyone who, quote unquote, shares in the body of Christ, that they all get equal reward. You'll also find this in the parable of the vineyard keeper who has harvest time, not enough workers, sends a servant to town. Keep that. It's always a worshiper servant that's sent to town in every story, which is cute. It's a cute way to say Jesus. Sends them out to find workers. They bring some in the morning, some at lunch, and some at dinner time. But all the workers get paid the same. So the workers who've been working all day and half the day are complaining that they didn't get paid more. To which the vineyard keeper responds, "It's my money. I do what I like." Everybody gets the same reward. So there's not different stations. There's different jobs.
But they do have hierarchies of angels in heaven, right? There's the archangels and 11 different types of angels, I think.
Well, okay, so yeah, you could take the hyperbole quite literally and break it into 11 pieces. You could.
Mm-hmm.
But what it's literally saying is, first of all, the words archangel, king, and priest all mean prior Jesus.
Prior Jesus?
It's called a retired Jesus. He did his job.
Oh
So
my
he's
God.
he's now an archangel, also called a king and a priest. So that's what that word means. Is he highest in heaven? Well, his job is the highest job in heaven. Is he the highest in heaven? No, he's still under God, and he still has the apostles to help him, his 12 pillars in heaven. That's still there. And they're apparently, a collection with different personality traits and, a broader point of view. So you don't have one being in charge, because one being in charge is something that we really intrinsically don't like the idea of, and you shouldn't. And there is no one being to be in charge, and that's part of the design of this whole thing. But say you got some kind of weird question, some kind of weird situation comes up. It's not always fair, depending on the situation, what the question is, to tell the individual angel who's not an archangel, well, just figure it out. Well, why not just have a council about it? Why not get together and sit down and talk about it and figure the thing out? Amongst a larger group that have a bigger experience than you have by yourself. Well, that's what's being spoken of. It's not authoritarian. It's not a dictatorship or something. That's not what's being described. Although Christians seem to like the idea.
You mentioned that the word angel, or this angel or that angel, has Jesus incorporated into the name somehow. Is that
the word priest,
or are they just regarded as a sort of something like Jesus?
No, it's not regarded as something like Jesus. It's literally someone who did the job of Jesus successfully. The crucifixion, they volunteered to die. God had handed them the truth on a silver platter. They went and spit it all over the place. And
so
they did
there
the
would
thing.
have been multiple Earths then.
Oh, by necessity, there's more than one Earth owned by our kind.
Oh, so we'd find humans all about on various planets, you think?
Too far away from each other to find each other, but yes.
All right, so we have the next bit is to be accepted to heaven, you must admit you're a sinner, ask for forgiveness, admit that Jesus died for your sins and rose again, and ask him to have a relationship with him.
Yeah, that's appealing to magic.
Sure.
Like your belief causes things to happen in reality without you acting on your beliefs. It's the silliest idea. I mean, you can sit here and, I don't know, want to be surrounded by Jell-O, whatever you want. And you can want to add it all you want. That's not going to make it happen. However, if you go to the store and you spend about $300 on little packets of Jell-O, and you got a bathtub and some warm water, you can be part of a solid block of Jell-O if you want to be. Enjoy yourself.
I have trouble picking the type of Jell-O, really.
Orange with peach chunks is always the correct answer, no matter what it is.
Really?
Oh,
peach
try
chunks.
it.
So
You'll see I'm right.
Would you make it from peaches fresh, or would you just get canned peaches?
Well, fresh is so much better than canned anything. Diced fresh peaches, yeah, and be sure not to get too close to the seed, because it starts to become flavorless and tough and stuff. Throw away a good bit of flesh with the seed. Yeah, it's a good idea.
Well, some good Jell-O advice from Richard. Way to go!
Thank you. I'm a Jell-O fan. That was mom's. That was the go-to food when kids were sick. And man, we were just, I don't know when we weren't sick. It just seemed like there was always a sick kid in the house. But anyway.
Yeah. And in the 50s and 60s, I think there was a lot of Jell-O salad recipes floating around, and people would bring them to potluck and that sort of thing.
Absolutely true. But back to the challenge. What Christians say about the Bible, and what does the Bible say about itself? How much are they assuming? How much have they come to, quote unquote, logically by necessity, based within their dogmatic view of what the text has to say? And that's the whole problem right there. They have these presuppositions that tell them what they're supposed to think, and it results in these ridiculous extrapolations that are just not possible in reality. Your belief in Christ doesn't do squat. It literally doesn't do anything. Okay? However, in the moment, if heaven were parked in the sky, literal, and Jesus goes, and you're like, oh my God, an alien invasion. My head's exploding. And Jesus goes, well, actually, that's heaven. And here, wait, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Doors open, angels exit. There you go. And they're descending. And here's one now. You see, that's just a real big, pretty human with the ability to fly.
Mm.
And they go, oh, I get it. I'm okay. This ain't so bad. Believing on Jesus means when he tells you the truth about the situation, and he has the authority to do that because he was enlightened by God himself, just believe Jesus. That's what it means to believe on Jesus. It's not magic. It's like believing the compulsive, the persuasive story that Jesus gives when he gives it. That's what it is. It's not magic.
This business of salvation, which I assume would mean you're accepted into heaven,
right?
Would typically we're told no one comes to the Father save through me. You must believe in me to be saved, that sort of thing. But
sure, why?
Pardon me?
Why?
Yes, that's what I've always wondered. You know, this infinite being, and he seems to care what I believe, or what if I'm just a fool and I don't believe because I don't understand the evidence?
You'll be fine. These things aren't as complicated as Christians try to make them sound. Look, there's basically an alien invasion of fully evolved human beings, and they're real human beings, and we really came from them. Grant me that, and the rest of it just falls to place. So here's heaven parked in the sky. People who just won't accept it, although they passed the measurement for original sin. They're cool. They're actual humans. Everything's fine, but they're not being forced to do anything. Well, then you're left with persuasion in a physical reality. That's what you're left with, and that's what all of this is talking about. The reason that it can keep you out of heaven, you wouldn't be saved if you don't believe, is because when you see the physical thing, if you don't believe Jesus, the default position is obvious. You're being invaded by aliens. Well, that's scary. You're not going to volunteer to become an abductee of aliens. All right. So that's why the default position in non-belief is damnation. There's no other position to have. It's a true dichotomy. Why? Because those would be the only obvious things to think in the moment. You'll notice nowhere in the Bible is someone going up to Christ going, oh, prove to me this God of yours exists. Prove to me this heaven exists. Prove to me these angels exist. The reason they don't ask that is because it's parked in the literal sky in the moment, and the book is talking about the second half of end times when this happens. Not 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, whatever years ago. So that's why that very obvious question is never posed, is because, well, it wouldn't even make sense to ask the question. So it's a true dichotomy in the sense that the obvious thing that the brain would think is alien invasion, and then you need corrected from that. So you need the information added to it of ancient humans fully evolved. You need that information added to it, which is the full message of Christ, correcting the religious people and the stubborn people to let them know what's actually going on, which is why someone can be healed the very same day, which is why lightning can issue from the sky and burn up a big pile of wet wood, which is why there's lightnings under the throne of God seen by the people. I mean, if the math that I'm doing is quite simple math, by the way, I don't think I'm doing it poorly, but I don't want to sound overly proud. So if the math I'm doing is correct, the mercy seat is a sphere that measures across 10,200 miles. It's a little bit bigger than the planet, okay? Now you take a planet-sized object, and it could be of an energetic differential between it and the reserves in the Earth, that is lightning and stuff, and the Earth is obviously now balanced as a capacitor with outer space, because we see lightning going in both directions. And you take this foreign object and you put it 3,000 feet alone, only 3,000 feet off the ground. You think there's not going to be lightning under the throne of God? I don't know how you'd avoid it. It could be entirely true that getting this close to this planet that was in this situation with an atmosphere inducing electricity from outer space for so long is what recharges the batteries of heaven. That's not a goofy idea. And I imagine the lightning under the throne of God will all be going off the planet upward toward heaven, striking heaven.
Well, technically, if you have the ability to have a ship that can cross the galaxy, your technology would be so far off the charts that the sort of considerations we would think about, they would dwarf any of those issues.
Well, maybe it just powers their microwave ovens. I don't know.
Yes, exactly. So from your perspective, this event that Jesus somehow presents himself to us and say, "Look, it's going to be okay. Here's what's going on, and join me in the mothership."
Sure, that's the whole thing. Is he keeps saying, "I am not of this world, but I am on this world." In other words, I belong there. He's trying to say you do too. He keeps saying, "You have heard, but I say." That is, you look at this Bible this way, but I'm trying to tell you that's not what it means. And that's the entirety of the message, is correcting the old dogmatic superstitions and making it something that is pungent and causes drunkenness instead of watered down, colorless, flavorless. Who gives a crap? I mean, the entirety of the ministry is the miracle of water into wine. That's the same thing. He spends all of his time going, it's important because.
I think the wedding at Cana was the first miracle by Jesus.
Where he turns the water into wine.
Yeah, I think so. I could be wrong.
It has to be. No, it has to be. It couldn't be some other way. And here's why I know that you're right without looking it up.
Oh, okay.
It has to be the first miracle because his the woman, it says his mother, and people assume that means Mary, but it doesn't actually mean Mary. It means goddess. His mother, his spiritual mothering person, says to him, "It's time for the wedding feast. That is the Last Supper in the upper room. That is the marriage of the bride. That is the bride of Christ. That is the people agreeing to be under Christ in heaven under God. That is to say, ascension and everything attached to it," which is why these themes keep repeating. She comes to him and says, "There is no wine for the feast." You know why it's important to have wine for the feast?
Because everyone came there to drink? No, I'm not sure.
No, because they don't understand, and they need it explained to them what the stories are about. So Jesus has to turn the plain, meaningless, flavorless, no one even really gives a crap about it, religion, into something that is pungent and luxurious and causes drunkenness. You've known some people and watched people get drunk before, I'm sure I have. And when people get drunk, they become one of two things. They're either extremely offended by just every little thing, or they're just extremely loving and laughing and having a great time.
Okay.
So let's take two hardcore atheists. Heaven parked in the sky. They're thinking it's an alien invasion. They're sitting there talking to Jesus. He's doing his job. One of them accepts what Jesus says, that what's going on is there's an ancient intergalactic society of fully evolved human beings who are offering us the most awesome trip ever, becoming part of that intergalactic society. And we don't have to like pay to get on the spaceship or anything. It's a birthright. And one of them gets it and goes, holy crap, I am so on. That sounds amazing. And they get giddy about it. Like they're drunk with this new idea, which is a repeating theme in the Bible. But the other one is like, nope, those are biological aliens designed to trick me into thinking they're angels so that I'll fall for this huge trap and I'm going to be lunch. And they get angry and defensive. And that's the truth of it, man. People become one of those two things in that kind of a situation. They act drunk.
So if this happens, then Jesus isn't going to sort of directly communicate to our hearts. It's going to be more of an appeal to our brains, so to speak.
That's a line you just quoted the Bible, you know.
I did not know.
You quoted the Bible in two different places. Actually, it says, always be ready to give a reason. That means a logical explanation for using reasoning. That's what that word reason right there. Always be ready to give a reason for the hope that is within you. Can you imagine a situation more profoundly hopeless than the Earth had a solar ejecta that triggered a major volcano, a super volcano. Mercury lost its orbit, crashing into two moons over Jupiter, igniting it as a short-term star. A chunk of the moon Io propelled back to the Earth, crashes in, poisons an ocean. Another chunk of rock from outer space a few months before that had crashed down to the Earth and poisoned some stuff. We're now in a binary solar system. The Earth's in between two light sources. Nobody can really sleep well, and then aliens show up. People would have a good reason to be freaking out.
Yes, and why not leave the planet? Because if it's been hit by a moon, moon,
well, a chunk of a moon, but
okay, well, it would be pretty much uninhabitable.
Well, it is slowly becoming uninhabitable, and by no accident. That the angels are actually performing this onto the Earth. It's just a slow death of the planet to encourage people to just go ahead and take the spaceship ride. And they're doing it quite on purpose. And you can say, well, that's not justified, but we can talk a lot about why it's justified. But so in a situation like that, most people would be hopeless. Well, what's it look like? Well, it looks like the solar system's falling apart, and specifically it's being real bad on the Earth. And now you've got this alien race that shows up, and as soon as they're done measuring everybody for their height versus wingspan, this other alien race shows up, and they're like actually cooler than the first race of aliens that show up, but they do look a little bit different from us, but very similar, but a little bit different. And they seem to be really chill and in charge, and that's attractive. Go ahead.
Oh, I just sort of so that would these be a different type of angel then?
No, well, technically yes, it's a different type of angel, but it's not our kind.
What about the dead? Will they be resurrected somehow?
Oh, that's not miraculous. We're 20, 30 years from being able to do it ourselves. It's just a matter of taking a viable ovum in a healthy woman, replacing its genetic material with a composite derived from living ancestors of that person, putting it in the egg, putting it in the right spot in the right time. And, I think we actually have the science to do it now. We just don't do it.
Mm. Well, I suppose you could always dig up Abraham Lincoln and harvest his DNA. I suppose, but for many human beings, we have no DNA of them. They're just plain dead.
Really?
And
Tell me one.
well, think of all the human beings who, well, for example, all the people lost in the Holocaust who were cremated. I don't think their DNA is viable. Um,
So, well, no, I wouldn't think their DNA in their physical bones would be viable. I would never suggest any such thing. That's ridiculous.
yes,
Did they have any brothers, sisters, cousins that survived?
maybe. Let's say they do.
So, let's say they had several cousins that survived because they just fled the country at the right time. Would they be cousins because they had a common ancestor?
Certainly.
Would the common ancestor's genetics still be alive in the descendants of that common ancestor?
I suppose, yes. You would have to know. Of
You
course,
have to know a lot of stuff.
yes, and you would need to. It would probably be easier if this ship somehow had knowledge of the original DNA. For example,
It
if
would
you
have
want
to.
to resettle a planet, you don't need to
Right.
take the animals with you. You just need to know digitally their DNA and then recreate it, and then find a way to what's the word? To have it
You
gestate.
you'd need a certain amount. You'd need a false womb or a living womb, but you could do it. Yeah, I see your point. By the way, the animals and plants in heaven are enjoyed by angels, and they keep them alive because, well, it's not too much expense.
Hmm. So old dogs go to heaven. That's what you're saying.
Not all, no, but a sampling, yes.
Hmm. Just the good ones. Okay.
No,
The
just 14 random ones. And in a direct translation of that story, it actually says the words, although it's ancient Hebrew, it's said really chunky, as you know. I could find it and read it for you. I have a direct translation of that part. It's something like to be preserved. That's what the animals going into the ark are doing. To be preserved, to be evaluated. And in the King James, they just left off the evaluation part. They just threw those words away because it didn't make sense.
right.
But it's in the original text. It's to be preserved, to be evaluated. So
We spent a long time in church and with the idea of salvation that we will be judged. And
for what?
of course, pardon me.
For what? What are you going to be judged for?
Oh well, for your moral accomplishments or detriments, but
No
you
way.
don't see that as part and parcel of this process.
Well, let's take the larger view. A set of instructions, especially complicated instructions for a complicated job, is not written to people who can't do it. That's illogical. But it could be written to someone who does do it. In the case of the Bible, there's only one that does it. Thereby, the Bible is written to the Christ. It's a love letter. Anyone can read it, sure, and they're welcome to try, but ask them, they're going to fail. Okay. So when it says, be ye perfect, for the Father is perfect, who's it talking to?
Jesus?
It's talking only to would it be reasonable to ask it of anybody else?
No.
It's not reasonable, right? Is it reasonable to ask that of the hero of the story? Well, even that's a stretch, but okay, I'll take it. Maybe he can do that. When it says give up all your goods and walk away and don't even take an extra cloak, do you think that's solid advice for like everybody always? Economies would collapse.
Yes, but that was basically the offer he made to the apostles. What was it? Follow me and I will make you fishers of men.
That's right. See, it's an immoral thing to ask unless the situation is very, very specific. You easily see that.
I also found it disturbing there was some notion, I can't remember where in the Gospels this took place,
Hmm.
but that Jesus said something to the effect, you must love me and hate your family
Yes.
and follow me, which
Yeah.
is an astonishing
No,
thing
it's
to
not.
say,
No, it's
really.
absolutely perfectly moral, makes perfect sense in the situation. Let's say you had 30 atheists, they're all related.
Hmm.
Okay? Just for simplicity, I'm going to say atheist, right? And they all got measured for sin by angels, which they think are aliens and not advanced human beings, not fully evolved human beings, but some kind of replicate thing. So they say, no, I'm not taking heaven. How do I know they said no? Because they're still on the planet. That's how I know they said no. They would have ascended. So they obviously said no to that. Now they're staying behind. So you got these 30 people randomly selected, but they just all happen to say no to heaven.
Hmm.
Now present that scenario again. Your challenge. Present the challenge again.
Oh, well, I'm not sure. Let's see. Um, Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men.
Hate.
Uh,
The word was
you must,
hate.
pardon me. Yes, you
The
must.
word was hate.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So you've got randomly selected 30 people who didn't accept it to this point. You're in the second half of end times. They already saw the announcing miracles, the arrival of heaven, and met angels. You see how stubborn these people are already? Okay.
Yeah, they're pretty stubborn.
Going from there, Jesus says, you must hate your mother, your father, your uncle, your cousin, your daughter. The word hate there means divorce. It's not about an emotional state of extreme dislike. That's not what that word hate means. It means to separate yourself from. Now, in order for them to follow him, do they have to separate themselves from? It almost goes without saying. It's so obvious in the moment. What else could you say about it? You have to leave that group if you're going to follow me. Because I'm taking you to heaven, they're staying here.
But in the context of the Gospels,
Yeah.
These apostles left their families behind. They might have left children starving behind them.
You can say might have all you want.
Well, it's a logical inference.
No, it's not.
So
how many of the apostles were married according to the story?
I don't know. But
can you tell me historically what it means to be a fisherman?
Historically,
what kind of a guy is a merchant marine?
Well, I don't think they're all single, but I see what you mean. But someone who goes out onto a lake and catches fish and brings them back and sells them, I don't think they're necessarily single.
They don't have to be single by necessity. However, the majority of them make way too much money, party way too hard when they're ashore. They're almost never ashore. They're more likely to have a girlfriend than an actual steady woman. They don't want to have children. If they have children, it's probably by accident. And they're usually, or there's a high percentage of them that are drunkards. That's the kind of people you want to be apostles. You go and you find the fishermen. Why? Because they're single and they're kind of ne'er-do-wells and they're tough and they're streetwise and they don't fall for everything and they don't switch their mind constantly. And but on the other hand, since they've rejected most of society, they're not totally closed-minded about things either. So that's really fertile, firm ground. A good place to start a series of teachers. Pretty darn smart, if you ask me. Oh, and they're probably going to be single, whatever.
All right.
And then from that group, it'd be pretty easy to find 12 single guys.
And in your perspective, people who are taken into heaven, their moral stance or lack of it doesn't matter. Maybe they will become perfected in heaven.
Well, let's take that to the extreme, which is actually a lowballing, but we would think of it as an extreme. Let's say some amazing scientist invented a pill, and that pill cured every known human disease.
Okay.
By the way, such a pill exists, by the way, and I'm not joking with you. It exists somewhere. We don't have it yet. And you say to yourself, as that doctor, you say, okay, now I need to evaluate who gets the pill and who doesn't. What the hell are you talking about? You just said they're all flawed in some way. I can fix absolutely anything, and I'm going to blackball some. How would you justify that ever?
I couldn't. Just giving some healing and the rest, no.
Exactly. Exactly.
Don't think
It would be immoral by definition. You can't justify it. Okay, so instead what is done is God has that magic pill, which is freedom of the human genome. The other 20% starts coding. That's what the magic pill is. And he offers it to absolutely anyone who will take it. All you have to be is a human being. That's the only thing that can preclude you from this offer, is if you're partially not human being. And then anyone who says yes gets it. And what they did in the past is quite irrelevant, because they will have the full truth. They will be eternal, not immortal beings. They will be perfectly healthy with sound mind, sound body, and remain that way forever. There's no reason to keep anyone out. On the other hand, there's no way you can morally defeat someone's will. You can't make choices for people. That is oppression, and oppression is slavery.
What about the argument that that the presence of some people in heaven would be so deleterious? For example,
What?
you are, you're a Jew, and what do you know? All the Waffen SS showed up, and all the prison camp guards.
I'll tell you what is, and I don't think this is your argument. I think you're only presenting it. I'll tell you where the logic is flawed in the person who created that argument first, whoever that was. They just assumed
me,
that they.
I think I have an answer for it, but I wanted to hear yours.
Okay. A perfected human brain wouldn't operate the same way as it does right now. The objection requires that they kept the same thinking brain. That's insanity. That's ridiculous.
So, that beings who are people who come into heaven will be perfected. So
in every way,
will have empathy and
they'll probably look at each other and burst out laughing and hug each other.
So that takes care of the next paragraph. Can a serial killer just before execution make
Absolutely.
a sincere appeal to Jesus?
Why is that? What's wrong with that when they are restored into heaven with a non-damaged brain without birth defect? They would no longer be a serial killer. What's the problem?
Yeah, exactly. If God wanted to, surely he's capable.
If they just accept it.
Okay.
Just taking the deleterious mutations out of a genome set to insert it into an egg, or to develop it without those deleterious mutations, is to make the human perfect. See, the reason we're imperfect is because by the time you're about 40, you've collected about 60,000 deleterious mutations. Of those, about 60 to 100 of them are going to get past the body sperm barrier, and it's going to be a problem in your germ cells themselves, poorly repeating your genetic material, half of which makes your child. And each parent gives 60 to 100 deleterious mutations to the next generation per adult. Okay.
And plus, there are ones that emerge just as a result of errors in replication and whatnot.
Sure, absolutely. Well, there's corrective programming for that, but you're a kid and you bite the thermometer and you swallow some mercury. Well, there's an instant problem. You ate some lead chip paint back 40, 50 years ago. There's a problem. You went out in the sun every day all of your life. Well, that's a problem. Well, you ate some foods that weren't really clean. That's a problem. They had pesticides. All of these free radicals are killing us. It's what we call aging. That you can't perfectly replicate right now. Your telomeres are getting shorter and shorter by the year. Every 7 years is a worse replicate of the whole you than you had before. It's slightly not as good. And that's what aging means. There is no such thing as aging. There's only the falling apart of your genome. So a body in heaven with a genome that was perfectly restored, perfectly maintained, 100% coding has nothing to do with aging. There's no possibility of a mental defect. There's no possibility of Down syndrome, missing limbs, Huntington's chorea. These are not possibilities. Cancer, not a possibility.
So presumably a Down syndrome person assumed into heaven would have their proper chromosome count restored.
They'd still look like them. They'd still look like themselves. They would still be themselves in personality. It's just they wouldn't have any of the dysfunction.
Right.
It would be okay to have been healed of Down syndrome and look back at my life and go, gosh, I was so happy and loving. And the only time I was ever pissed is when somebody abused me. I was a pretty awesome person. Like, how could you complain about that? I feel worse for like Matt Dillahunt, who's going to have to look back at his life and go, wow, I was a really miserable bastard who just wanted to ruin everyone's life. What an asshole I was.
I don't think he's like that, but I wouldn't presume to argue with you about Matt.
I think in heaven, with the reality of it all, I think he would look back at his life something, not that, because he's not me and I'm not him, but I just kind of imagine it be something like that.
There's of course, as an atheist, I don't think this Bible is holy and really telling us what really will happen in the future or what the nature of heaven is. But I don't want to be cynical either. There's a part of me that wishes it were true, so that people like my friend Sal could be restored. And
it's just a matter of vegetables and genetics, and viable ovums. It's not magic.
Another way to look at it is, for example, I don't think that Muhammad made the night journey on a winged horse.
Sure,
and well, maybe he did, but
you also have to know what that means. It's not a literal. It's not a literal night journey on actually a pegacorn. If you want to be definitionally correct, it's a pegacorn.
What is a pegacorn?
Well, it's a Pegasus with a unicorn horn. It's a pegacorn. I don't know what else to call it. That the Pegasus and the unicorn division is actually a false division. It's the same animal. We're just kind of got we overly divided the folklore. But anyway, peace and respect, B. And you drop in on B sometimes, don't you, Steve?
Oh, yeah. So I like the Hangouts. He does awesome stuff.
Right on.
Oh, and he's driving home and listening. Okay. So no typing then. I don't want to see any typing.
No typing from you. Behave yourself. Behave yourselves.
Yes.
RoboCop. But anyway.
RoboCop 2.
Yeah, very good. Very good, sir. So in a situation like that, it would be hard to have the same attitude I have right now. In fact, I find it a real curiosity. And I know that I can't know what I'll be like. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So let's just say, for instance, within our genetics, the 20% that doesn't code is higher folders that allow my brain to be exactly this same brain, but operate in a more efficient way, for instance. And let's say that only multiplied my computing ability by, say, 5 times. Okay.
All right.
Which you know, and what is plausible in reality is actually a pretty darn low percentage of increase. If it's only 500 times better than it is right now. But then, you know, you could say, well, that would make you like literally 5 times better at thinking. You could say something like that. It's not perfect, but you know, the interesting thing about that is in protein coding, we're only 2.3 to 2.7%, depending on which survey you read, different from a bonobo or a chimpanzee. 2.3%.
I've heard that.
What about 20%? What if we were 20% different than we are right now? How big of a change is that, Steve?
Well, it's enormous. Also, there are just because a protein exists and our bodies use it, it could be used in so many different ways and so many different functions.
That's the interesting part.
Yeah, so a single chemical could be used in different ways throughout our body. So it doesn't.
Right.
So we don't know the half of it, I suppose, is what I'm saying.
Right. So really, it's exponential. When I take that 2.3 and I compare it to 20, it's really exponential to say 20. You can't literally divide it by 7.2 and get the answer. It's not going to work out for you.
Mm.
You know.
There's also epigenetics, which is really weird, and I wouldn't pretend to know how it functions, but it's
right.
a marvelous thing.
Luckily, Moon Medi, none of our non-coding genetic material would make us lesser of a being, or we'd be in real deep crap. I appreciate what you wrote there. Moon Medi wrote, with a 20% change, we could be a freaking banana. And yeah, that's about right. Yeah,
let's be a banana. Right. They're loaded with potassium.
That's an odd justification, but you are a zebra, so I'm willing to accept it. But it is reminiscent of the restaurant at the end of the universe, I have to say, when the speaking thing starts talking about itself as a food.
Oh, yes, that was remarkable. And you know, the actor in the BBC TV series was the same guy who played one of the Doctor Who variants.
Oh, really? Did not know that.
It was the one who wore that weird hat. That he looked like a carnival barker. No, I'm not pulling your leg.
There was one that wore a weird hat.
Well, I want to, you know, if you know those hats you can find made out of styrofoam, the brim is perfectly perpendicular to the edge of the hat. And well, you know what? Later on, I will find it for you. How about that? And I'll send you an email.
Okay, sure.
Let's see. Also, I think the actor was doing a bit of a Churchill impersonation when he spoke. Okay,
impersonation of who?
Winston Churchill.
Oh, okay.
Pick who.
So while you're doing that, let me read you this.
Yes.
The rest of that last one we addressed. Can a serial killer, just before execution, make a sincere appeal to Jesus, as described above, and be accepted? This seems unsatisfying. If we were all on a level playing field, you wouldn't be using your brain that you have right now to say it seems unsatisfying. But instead, the serial killer would not be a serial killer, you would see things with a much bigger view frame. You couldn't possibly look at it the same way you would right now. And it's not impossible to say that you would just walk directly up to a serial killer who had purposefully killed your brother and give them a hug and say, wow, I'm glad that crap's over. And they'd be like, yeah, me too. That was pretty crazy stuff, or something like that. But let's go on to the next one. If you really knew me, you would know my Father as well. From now on, you do not know him and have, you do know him and have seen him. Okay, because you've seen Jesus. Okay, this part of the Bible is actually quite literal. In fact, it goes into great detail, saying that it extracts what is material so small you'd have to refer to it as pulverized material. And in the English, that came out as dust of the earth. It doesn't say dust of the earth. It says pulverized, impossibly small material, not dust. Dust is the wrong idea there completely. That existent material is drawn out of Adam, as in the first human being. That's where the material comes from, which is why he's the father of all, even if he didn't have sex with your mom, because your mom is a part of him, and her mom and her dad are part of him, because everybody is, because it's the most pure, undivided genetic survey for all of the human animal is the first human ever, which is Adam. So that's interesting. But there looks to me like there's some kind of a massive countdown timer. So what they do is they take this genetic material from this one being, or actually two beings, male and female, and they divide it into haplogroups, from there into ethnic groups. Then they plant them on an earth separated from each other and hit the stopwatch. And what's going to happen over a certain amount of time is they're going to progress in technology, the organization, in numbers. They're going to take over their landmass, eventually building, enslaving animals and building cars. And then they're going to build boats, and they're going to meet each other, and all this whole thing results in a recombination of all that DNA into a singular person again, which is the Father.
Well, I'll take a deep breath. I'm just, not inclined, being who I am. I may be one of those people who doesn't want to get in on, fly up to the mothership. But on the other hand, I might be the sort of person who'd take a chance and just to see what was inside. In the public chat of the Richard Madsen channel, I put that information about the doctor, and he played Dish of the Day in 1981.
Okay.
Strange that I would remember that little bit of trivia.
Why not? It's weird. It's interesting. Okay, so we've been going for 2 minutes, a minute and a half shy of an hour already, and we're supposed to be keeping these half-hour shows. So what you want to do?
Oh. Well, then I want to sign off and maybe get myself some food.
Finish thoughts.
Finish thought. Well, I think this is extremely interesting, and it's like we have the Bible telling a completely different story than what we're used to. But do I think that this is evidence that this will happen?
It's not.
No, it's and that's where I'm left.
Amen to that. Good job. That's logical. I applaud.
Thank you. I do what I can.
My finishing thoughts are, I'm persuaded to believe this is true for its predictive power, that those things are plausible in reality. I see no problem with it. It's not logically inconsistent in any way, as the Christians describe it, it is logically inconsistent, but it's not logically inconsistent within the text. I see that there's every possibility of this to happen. And then what I'm actually persuaded by is that it has predictive power within reality that taught me things I could not have guessed that I know are now true because I went out and saw if they were true, and they are. And what that means is that ancient man cannot have authored it. That's what that means. Literally cannot have. They did not have the knowledge. I didn't even have the knowledge, and I'm a pretty modern dude. But I was only about 20 years out of range of the knowledge. I just quit school and got to work, so I didn't learn certain things, and that's why I didn't have it. I could have learned them. The knowledge was there. But because of those necessities of what's in the text, I know that human beings did not author it. Write it, copy it, even mess it all up and make it nasty. Sure, we've done all that, but we can't have authored it. And that's what I find compelling. Moon Medi, in final thoughts, I think the trick is to recognize it when something like this unfolds well spoken. That's right. Know the signs of end times in a clean interpretation that makes sense to a human mind, involving no magic. You ever want to hear that story? I'd love to tell it to you. Don't accept that it's true just because it's plausible in reality, but when it happens and at the right scale and in the right order by the description given, just understand that there's living beings interfering with your physical reality, and that's not miraculous. And they knew they were going to do it, and they told us they were going to do it. And to us, it's like the little kid who hears about kissing. That sounds impossible. That's never going to happen. And then at best, it's prophecy. But it's not. It's just beings acting on reality, telling you that they're going to before they start. Fair enough?
All right. Well, then, Richard, I wish you peace, respect, and chocolate chip cookies.
Peace, respect, and chocolate chip cookies to you as well. And to all of you in the side chat and anyone who might watch this in the future, peace and respect and chocolate chip cookies to you as well, unless you don't like chocolate chip cookies, in which case feel free to replace them with a different delicious snack food. And I want you all to know that I truly do look forward to the day that we're all great friends. Until next time.